Scott here. Well, I've done it. I've finally mastered the art of beating video games, all thanks to cheating. Now that I've got that out of the way, I'm gonna use my newfound knowledge to beat games under different circumstances. I've been working on my chili run lately. Every time I hit a button, I have to eat 5 spoonfuls of chili. I'm not even past the menu! We've all been there, playing Price is Right decades and going, what do I do? I've gotten lost in my fair share of games, whether I have no idea where I should be going, no idea what my next objective is, I just simply didn't understand the directions given to me, I can't find anything. Video games are easily the quickest way to realize I'm an idiot. I remember playing BioShock Infinite in 2013. You could activate an arrow showing you where to go by hitting up. After one playthrough, this controller is useless now. I just don't want to waste my time with some games. I don't want to screw up and take longer than I should to beat it. I just want to do exactly what I'm supposed to do. But that's just not gonna happen. Everybody makes mistakes, just look at everybody. Everybody gets stuck at certain parts of games, or can't complete portions of them without a little bit of help. And apparently helping desperate gamers is a lucrative business. Strategy guides and walkthroughs are the most shameful thing I could ever look at. I don't want to be told the solution to the puzzle, I gotta figure it out myself. I'm no pussy, I'll beat this game with my eyes closed. I am completely lost. I've looked up solutions to problems I've had with games a good number of times, but I always feel this overwhelming sense of shame trickle down anything but my spine. When you figure out a solution to a puzzle on your own, that's pretty much why you play video games. That's where a lot of the satisfaction comes from doing something all on your own or just having that aha moment. And it feels amazing to be on a winning streak, to constantly figure out solutions with no hesitation, and then you get to that stupid part in Uncharted 3. What the hell do I do here? That's when I usually call it quits and just look up a guide. When the rest of the game is like this, and then I'm stuck trying to figure out this part for like 3 hours. Like, oh wow, I can't figure out this puzzle in Resident Evil 2. I want to piss my pants, not think critically. If I can't get the solution quick enough, I have to lay out my options. Do I swallow my pride and Google the answer, or do I swallow my pride and play video games? Even just Googling the solution to a puzzle can be tricky. Sometimes it's hard to put your situation into words, but most of the time, what I'm looking for immediately comes up. Yeah, that one thing in Link's Awakening. Oh, there it is. That shows me that tons of other people run into the exact same problem I do in games, and brings up the question, is the player admitting defeat by looking up a walkthrough, or did the developer fail to make that certain area more understandable? I played Hellblade, and within the first hour there was this. What? You have to line up these things to form diagrams by standing in certain places, but that requires finding certain places to stand in and trudging around the environment to find these certain places. It's hard to explain, let alone do. I gave up trying to figure it out on my own, and lots of other people did too, apparently. So fuck it, time to whip out the strategy guides. This is all about my Hellblade playthrough. Online walkthroughs are one thing. Most of these are fans helping other fans get through a game. Strategy guides are video game companies monetizing the fact that their games were designed poorly. As nice as guidebooks can be, the more I think about it, I do have to ask, why some of the stuff wasn't included in the game itself. Why do I have to buy a book to know what the hell to do here? I mean, it wouldn't be considered a puzzle if everybody would be able to figure out the solution immediately. I guess at that point I might as well ask, what's the point of buying a thesaurus when the dictionary should just straight up tell me what another word for upset is? For some people, they don't need it. They can find another word for upset by reading the dictionary some more and finding one on their own. But for people who just need answers, and they need them now, crack out the thesaurus. The strategy guide is the thesaurus of video games. I have said that so many times today. Strategy guides primarily began life as video games became more complex in the 80s, when games actively required explanation or strategy to complete. One of the only things you needed to ask when playing most Atari games is, how much longer can I keep this up? High score-based games definitely had strategies to them, but players rarely got stuck in them. When games started offering worlds to explore and get stuck in, you bet they set up hotlines to call. The Nintendo Power Line was a quick and dirty solution for players who got stuck in games. Call this number and you'd be directed towards an expert. They'd have binders full of walkthroughs to reference and be playing games right then and there to more easily assess the problem you were having. This seemed like the best way to get past tricky points in a game. Just call the hotline. The only problem is, it was a hotline. Yeah, sure, if you want to spend more money on the phone than you did on the game, go for it. I've called hotlines for much less.
Thank you for calling Nintendo. For assistance in English, press 1.
What's up? The Nintendo Power Line was kind of an immediate solution to problems players had, but it did well enough to be operational until June 2010. I am shocked. However, if you needed help with games, most just primarily checked out the latest tips and tricks in magazines. Nintendo Power offered loads of maps and hints for games in the 80s and 90s, and that's what the original issues were primarily all about. Sometimes they just throw out little tips here and there, and other times they pretty much explain the whole game. This is the entirety of Dr. Wily's Revenge. Secret codes, direct answers to popular gaming questions, hell, sometimes they told you how to fix your game systems. Nintendo Power and other magazines were how many players overcame all kinds of obstacles back then. Some of the problems with getting help by magazines, though, was that these things only came once a month, and it wasn't a guarantee the game you were having problems with was going to be featured. But when your game was featured, it was great. They wouldn't always spoil the game and would just supplement the gaming experience by giving players tools to create their own strategy to beat the game themselves. That's a great fucking idea, strategy guides! Why not just specifically release guides dedicated to specific games? That way, if you need help, you know exactly what to harass your mom to buy. Now, there was a Super Mario Bros. 3 player's guide, strategy guides covering loads of NES games alongside certain guidebooks you could get bi-monthly in the mail through Nintendo Power. However, one of the first specific ones I think many remember is Mario Mania, which is not only a full Super Mario World guide, but doubles as a retrospective of Mario up until that point. We have a timeline of the games, character profiles, artwork, Mario and other media. It's an interesting read, especially comparing how these things were described as back then to nowadays. But looking at the strategy guide portion, it goes into insane detail for a game like Mario World. It may be because many of the moves you can pull off in this game are second nature to me now, but they go crazy in depth with pretty much every single thing here from the start of the game all the way to the end. There's nearly an entire page dedicated to what you can do with shells. Every area has a comprehensive guide alongside big fat pieces of artwork you don't see an awful ton today. Full spreads of levels. This is an incredibly comprehensive guide of not only Mario World, but all things Mario at the time. Now, I may have said Mario Mania is one of the first guides many would remember, but that doesn't mean they didn't exist before Nintendo hit it big. Oh no, no, no. I may have said Atari didn't require guides as much as NES era games did. Doesn't mean they didn't get them. Gaming books from the 80s. These were probably the most comprehensive gaming material you could get at the time. This one focuses on some of the more popular Atari 2600 games, featuring a catalog of them and a brief history of Atari at the beginning. They couldn't capture screenshots from the game, so instead they would recreate them and focus on explaining the best strategies for obtaining a high score. I mean, I go about my day asking this all the time. What would Video Frank say? These publications were all about telling you how to become a video game master, to know anything and everything about gaming to impress somebody. Yes, I'd like the definition of sex in the 80s, please. These paperback books dedicated to the ultimate tips on how to win at all things video games remind me of the 4 Dummies books. These were marketed to people who just wanted to win something for once in their lives. But for anybody playing games at the time, they made sure to pack these books up with enough content to make them enjoyable to a wide array of fans. There's even a preview section at the end talking about how things are looking bright for Atari in 1983. Yes, the video game crash of 1983 due to the video game market being oversaturated with shit. Listen, the market crashed around that time due to a variety of reasons, but the game everybody points to that supposedly caused it was E.T. the video game. It was hyped up, they expected it to be a wild success, and when people played it, they didn't understand what was going on and mass returned them. That spread the claim that E.T. was the worst video game of all time because people didn't understand it. They returned the game to the stores. One thing led to another. Atari said, we're f***ed, video game market crashed. But this game wasn't the sole reason, and compared to most other Atari games, is it really that much more confusing than Adventure? This game's considered one of the best Atari 2600 games ever made. Like, is this that much worse than that? I'm not saying E.T. was great or anything, but I feel like it's misunderstood. It really just required more of a knowledge of what exactly to do in the game. And would you look at that, an unofficial strategy guide that tells you exactly what you have to do in the game. This is one of the earliest dedicated strategy guides I could find, and of all Atari games, E.T. needed it the most. Most games on the console were based around getting a high score, while E.T. had more of a specific goal in mind. You effectively wanted to beat the game, finish the quest. It's just not apparent what the hell that quest is. So a cheap little strategy guide, yeah, that made a whole lot of sense. They actually give pretty decent screenshots and a cube you could put together of the different screens. And the idea of more complex games needing more complex forms of explanation and strategy held true as the next couple of generations came forward. It was no longer not only about getting the high score, rather finishing the game, but these two forms, the dedicated one-game guide and Book of Secrets, were some of the easiest methods of obtaining this kind of information for a bit. How to Win at Nintendo Games was one of the most popular books for NES players, but it's nothing special nowadays. Just a simple book full of strategies and tips. It's simply all about mastering the games that can't be beat. This book has a chapter about Mickey Mousecapade. This was a pretty popular series of books, as in I have 2 of them. But the video game magazines were still how most got their information on this type of stuff, and some magazine publications decided to combine the tip books with magazines, and we have the dedicated magazine-esque book of guides. We had a lot of unofficial ones, but Nintendo Power made quite a few, like Top Secret Passwords. Primarily a guide comprising of cheat codes, or a couple ones dedicated to the Game Boy, including one for the Super Game Boy, the adapter for the Super Nintendo. It's pretty much just a standard guide for the more popular Game Boy titles in the context of playing them on a Super Nintendo. The Nintendo Player's Guides are my favorite to go through. They almost always had extra sections in the book dedicated to just talking about the games at the time. Also, the formatting of the pages is just really nice, big and and bold screenshots, and some of the most well-written video game blurbs of the time. It's a little weird to enjoy going through these guides for games I already know how to play, but this is the kind of stuff I'd do as a kid. I'd read the same magazines over and over again on car rides. Why did I need to skim through this issue of Nintendo Power for the 9th time? Because it's enjoyable consuming media about an industry you enjoy. I don't know why. If you come up and tell me Wii Play was bundled with a Wii remote, like, yeah, I know that, but I'm gonna eat it up anyways because I'm a sucker for video game information. Or I have short-term memory loss. Throughout the 90s, it became more commonplace for specific video games to get their own dedicated guides instead of simply compiling information from a bunch of games into one magazine or book. When you have a game as big as Super Mario 64 or Ocarina of Time, they definitely require their own walkthrough instead of squishing tips for them into one short paragraph. And this was the birth of a video game tradition, the release of the strategy guide alongside the game. Magazines started to shift over more to news and reviews, and the tips and tricks portions became its own product with the strategy guide. No problem, I'd love to spend a couple of bucks on a guidebook for my favorite games. What the f*** is that? Right around the time these things started to burst in popularity, that pesky little thing called the internet started to become more widely used for more than just... If you were having a problem with a game, you could just hop on a message board and ask how to get past a certain section. Just look up the solution on Google, find a walkthrough another fan made, all for free. You didn't even have to drive to the store to pick up a walkthrough, it was all instant. So this should have been the immediate death of all things this, but physical strategy guides kept living on to this very day. They were more of a tradition than a necessity, something that people definitely continue to use, no doubt, but the practicality of them has been dwindling by the day. In the late 90s, early 2000s, sure, you could look up this stuff online, but internet speeds were a big fan of the word abysmal, and there weren't as large of a database of video game walkthroughs as there is now. Plus, you couldn't always trust the internet when it's giving you helpful hints. IGN still tells me all you have to do to turn the stars into birds in Mega Man 2 is hold A, but no, you have to hold A and B. You're a company, you should know better! So strategy guides still had their place in gaming, but as the internet became more widespread and was the one-stop shop for gaming everything, they started to become so much less prevalent. Eventually, Nintendo and other companies stopped making them themselves and licensed their titles out to companies that specialize in strategy guides, most notably Prima Games. See, I personally feel like something was lost a bit when others started making guides for the big guys. See, here we have an official Nintendo walkthrough. I'd be concerned if they didn't know what I should do. When you have an outsider make the guide, things get a bit iffier. That's not to say we haven't gotten some top quality works from companies like Prima or Brady Games or Piggyback. I mean, they do officially license walkthroughs after all, but they can definitely be a bit lame sometimes. Like the Final Fantasy IX strategy guide, in which a good chunk of information you had to visit a website to obtain. Why the fuck? This was when guidebooks were trying to harness the popularity of the internet in hopes that online walkthroughs and physical strategy guides could exist simultaneously and be of benefit to each other. No. If anything, this just made you ask, why did I buy the book if it's asking me to go online anyways? Why wouldn't I just go online for everything? A lot of physical guides now give you a free e-guide which you can access online, and like, yeah, nice sentiment, but the whole charm of seeing everything the official guide has to offer, honestly, a lot of it comes from the fact that it's physical. If I need help in a game and I grab my phone, it's way simpler for me to quickly Google my problem instead of pulling up the e-guide. Now, some walkthroughs are really nice. They give you great and clear screenshots that tell you exactly what to do, and then you have the exact opposite of that. Here I have this Mario Kart Wii guide by Prima. The layout's okay, but I feel like they just don't show a lot and end up describing things with only words, and I don't get why. Before you engage foes in competition, park your car here. Where? But I do like when they take advantage of the fact this is a physical book on paper, having a little checklist and just pure visualization of what you're supposed to do, written and edited by professionals with the game developer's blessing, usually means knowledge is on for dinner tonight. One thing I really love about traditional strategy guides is the art. And not only the key art from the games, but the stuff made specifically for the guides, the diagrams of the levels. Mario Galaxy's guide has full 3D renders of the worlds, and it's really cool. These were definitely made by some unpaid intern I died to have lunch with, but just getting a full-blown view of these levels is really nice. So much work gets put into these things, but sadly, I feel like this work seldom gets appreciated or even viewed, especially in recent years. The primary audience for strategy guides are the fans of these games, and thus, they don't actually need to crack these open. They just want the guides because they love these games so much, they'll buy it out of respect. I didn't need a Smash Bros. For Wii U and 3DS guide, but I wanted it because I loved those games. I skimmed it. I enjoy having all this info compiled into one amazing waste of paper, but how many people actually bought this guide to help them play the game? All the information related to how much damage certain attacks do, my god, this game had numerous updates. Characters and stages were added, the balance of attacks were tweaked. None of this is still true. This book was outdated within 4 months of its release, which is why the internet is the true best way to get help with games now. It blows, but it has to be this way. I mean, I've stopped playing my fair share of games for a while, and a couple weeks later, when I come back, what the hell happened when I was gone? I end up going to Google to see exactly what I'm supposed to do. You will find me bored and directionless if I go to GameStop praying they made a Kirby Star Allies guide. I feel less dirty looking at an official guide for pointers. Asking the internet for help, now that's too easy. See, I could play through an entire game no problem, no help required, but I'm more of a recreational virgin. I don't want to waste all this time trying to figure out some things on my own. I just want to get on with the game. And sometimes the walkthroughs you have to read aren't descriptive enough. That's when you need to look up the videos. I love game walkthrough videos. I know exactly what I want to hear. What's up, guys? It's me, Game Fan Mike here, and today I'm going to show you how to get through the entirety of the first level in Super Mario Brothers. It's really easy, it's really simple, and I'm going to show you real quick. This is a classic game, one of my all-time favorites, and I'm going to show you how to get from point A to point B. Before we get started, I'd really appreciate it if you gave me a like, a thumbs up, a nod, really. Any form of respect you can give, I'll take it. You are what's helping me grow and make helping you all out with games my full-blown career. Alright, ran out of time there. We'll start over on the next life. Just a reminder, guys, before we get to the meat of this, if you haven't yet, please follow me on Twitter. Each form of video game walkthroughs have some merit to them. It just so happens the internet-based ones have that much more merit. They're just so much easier to access, and most of the time you only need help with like one or two little things with the game. So buying a 400-page walkthrough for a game doesn't make much sense anymore. You can get all of this information online. And most of the people buying these things nowadays are collectors. And they're not buying these books because they need the walkthroughs. It's their favorite games. They know how to play them. They're buying these just because they're books based on their favorite games. So all of the information in this book is pretty much work completely wasted. And with Prima Games officially putting an end to their physical strategy guide business, I feel like others have the same sentiment as well. It just makes more sense to put time and effort into art books or retrospective works instead of physical strategy guides. But when these things finally bite the dust entirely, I won't ever forget them. I don't think I'll go the rest of my life without remembering. Oh shit, remember strategy guides?